This is the Discuss Metal Podcast with David Lipke, filmmaker and director of 30 Years of Sacrifice. Hosted by Dan Terry, presented by discussmetal.com.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Discuss Metal Podcast. My name is Dan. I'll be your host for this evening, or pretty much any evening that you're listening to this show or watching this show, or however it is that you're consuming this show. And tonight I've got a real treat for you guys. I've got David Lipke, filmmaker extraordinaire, just released a documentary on a band that is very near and dear to both of our hearts, the Living Sacrifice, 30 Years of Sacrifice documentary. Woo-hoo. David, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well for being off work and being able to chill out and hang and talk about music.
It's Tuesday, man.
Absolutely. It's just a regular Tuesday over here. So this documentary came out just what are we at now? 3 weeks ago? It was the 27th, I want to say. So probably longer than 3 weeks now. 27, 1, 2. Yeah, I'd say 3 or 4.
3 weeks, yeah.
Maybe 5 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, not that many.
I don't know. 4 weeks, 4.5. We'll do it at 4 and then split it.
All right. That's dope.
But yeah, so like that just came out, and the way it was released was a little different, I think, in that it was a live streamed documentary where everybody kind of got to watch live and comment live.
That was cool.
Yeah. And from what I understand, and we're gonna circle back to this. We're gonna go back in time here in a minute about how you kind of got involved with making documentaries and how you became a music fan and all that. But I did want to ask, kind of starting off, how long has that documentary on Living Sacrifice been in production?
I initially started it like literally January 1st, 2013, when the band was doing drum tracks for Ghost Thief,
Okay.
I've been planning it like probably a year prior to that is when I kind of like actually talked to Bruce and said, hey, I wanted to get Bruce's blessing. I wanted to get the guy's blessing before I started on it. And Bruce was awesome. Just said, they gave me their blessing, and they said, you can do whatever you want to do. It's not like they said, well, you can, but don't include this. No, I mean, they were all really, really cool. So initial, that was probably 2012, but then 2013, I initially, they were going into the studio to record Ghost Thief, which is, a studio here in Little Rock. And I was just like, I just wanted to jump in and hit the ground running. So I just, asked them if I'd come out, and they just, some of the scenes in the documentary, like towards the beginning of them recording it, that's some of the first footage that I recorded,
Okay. Gotcha. So quite some time. So we're going to, like I said, we'll circle back to that, but, I like some of these interviews to be as autobiographical as possible. And I think that what you do is really interesting. And, what got you into music or metal or hard rock or whatever label people put on it? What got you into that sort of music?
The funny thing is, early on, like in the early 80s, I think when a lot of kids are getting into punk and all that stuff, I was into rap music, if you can believe that. Just, the first wave of rap music. And the funny thing is, Chris Truby, I've been friends with him since about 86. I'm not saying Chris was the one that got me into metal per se, but Chris was the one that kind of introduced me to, he knew I liked all kinds of music.
Sure.
But for some reason, rap music was, what I liked to listen to. And he gave me Anthrax's I'm the Man, because he was like, oh, there's the rap in there, and I listened to it and I was like, yeah, this is good, I guess. But I remember flipping the tape over and listening to the rest of that EP. And I remember at the end, they do a cover of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. And I just remember hearing that. And for some reason, it blew me away. That was in like 86. And then over the years, I started just kind of listening to more and more. And I think when I heard Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, I think that was what sealed the deal for me. I didn't hear it early on when it first came out. I heard it like maybe in like 87. a couple years after it came out. But I remember hearing that on the radio, and that was it for me. And then Pantera came along, and then that sealed the deal for me. Metallica and Pantera sealed the deal. Then after that, it was just, balls to the wall, metal all the time. And
sure.
So
just trying to find the next heavy thing, the next heavier thing, the next,
exactly.
The next level of technicality. Yeah,
exactly. Because at first, I really was not into any of that, the thrashy stuff. I just, I just couldn't. I don't know. That was the one thing that kept me away from a lot of metal music, was just that fast, constant. I couldn't understand what was going on. But I remember when I heard For Whom the Bell Tolls, it was just heavy. It was just had a groove to it, and it was just you can just bang to it, and it's just like. And then my taste got more and more. Then I got into the more thrashier, faster stuff. But I had to really do it at a slower pace than I think most metalheads had to.
Sure. What got you into Living Sacrifice?
Chris Truby.
Well, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Because me and Chris were really good friends, like I said, about in '86. And him and his brother, I knew were in a band, Archangel, like I talked in the documentary. And that video that I showed of them playing, he would always bring that video over to my house. And we would, we'd be bored on a, Friday night with nothing to do. He would bring it over and we'd watch it and make comments and laugh and stuff like that. And then I remember when his brother left Archangel to join Living Sacrifice, he was all bummed, like, Jason's joining this band or whatever. And they're pretty cool, but, it sucked. Archangel got a replacement guitarist, and then, Jason joined Living Sacrifice. And then I started going to their shows. And I remember when they released their demo, that's when I heard their demo, when I saw them live a few times, I wasn't into them. But when I heard the demo, that's what made me go, oh, these guys are good. Because I was able to hear everything. My problem is with a lot of times with metal is it's just sometimes the mix is just horrible and it's just noise to me. But when I heard the demo, it was, I can hear everything clearly. I can hear what the guitars are doing. I can hear Lance's drums. I can hear the singing. And I was like, okay, that's a awesome song, So when I heard the demo, that's kind of really what got me involved. And the funny thing is, right around that time is kind of the same time I was starting video production. I was really getting interested in, editing and stuff like that. So you mix the music in with the videos. My dream at that time was to become a music video director and go to New York and LA and make music videos for bands and stuff like that. So my thought process is when I started getting into Living Sacrifice, I just, I was like, okay, I don't know any other bands. I know Chris and his brother's in this band. So I'm going to bring my camera to one of their shows, and I'm going to, that's how it kind of started. I would bring my camera to their shows. I'd record their set. I would take the video back home. I would hook up 2 VCRs and I would do some funky editing. And I would actually make these weird VHS covers. I would take it to Kinko's, make a color copy of it and glue it to a VHS cassette. And I'd give it to Chris. Hey man, give this to your brother and see what they think. And he'd give it to Jason. And, the next time I saw them, they would comment about, man, that video was cool that you did. So that kind of inspired me to like, oh, you guys like that? Okay, well, I'm going to do something even cooler next time, and it's kind of how the relationship with them started there.
Okay. So a lot of that footage that we saw in the documentary, a lot of that was actually filmed by you as well.
Yeah. A lot of all that early DJ Vino stuff was pretty much all me. Yeah.
That's cool. That adds an extra layer too. No, I didn't just do this documentary later on. This footage is all mine, pulled from VHSs.
Because I was so into the band at that time, I would, they would like tell me, okay, we're playing Vino's in 3 months. And I would get all excited. I'd mark it on my calendar. All right, in 3 months, they're playing, on April 10th. Okay, cool. What can I do? I would show up, I would show up to Vino's at, 3:30, 4 o'clock when they're doing their sound check. And I would record their sound check. And I would talk to them, after they were done with their sound check. I would shoot. I got so much footage of them just walking around the parking lot at Vino's talking to each other, just random stuff. Because I was always just like a fly on the wall, just trying to capture something cool. So
sure. Oh, that's awesome. So you kind of had known the band. So so you kind of already talked about what got you into editing and filmmaking. What did you do? What did you do? What was the next step as far as making movies, making videos goes?
I I mean, it was real ghetto at the start. It was, like I said, it was just me, a video camera, and two VCRs. I'd hook up maybe a stereo to something. It was just that. And then I learned that when I started college, I learned that there was a production. I can get a degree in video production. So I took some classes there, and then there is where I started learning to actually use, actual, editors and editing machines and stuff like that, which made me go to other local bands around that at that time. And I was just really wanting to do something in the music, in the scene. You're either in a band or you want to be in a band or you want to do something in the music scene. So I couldn't play any music. I wasn't in a band. So my my way of like being in part of that scene was, I'm going to do music videos. Hey, you're in a band. I like your band. Hey, you want me to do a music video for you? So I would just do these really low produced, cheesy music videos for local bands in the area. And that's how it kind of, how it snowballed. And then eventually I got a job at a local TV station and it just snowballed from there.
Were there a lot of local bands with a pretty big local scene in Little Rock?
It was pretty big. I mean, especially at that time in the early 90s, I mean, I'm not saying Living Sacrifice was the first, which they weren't, but it's like they came out really early on to where it was like they were like at the start of this big explosion in Little Rock as far as metal bands and alternative bands. It was a pretty big thing, and Vino's was the big place for everyone to play, because Vino's was like the only place in Little Rock that, number one, metal bands can play, and number two, they were more of an all ages type of club. Every other club in Little Rock was more 18 and up, and Vino's was probably one of the fewer. I don't know for a fact if they were the only place that did under 18 shows, but
so they and maybe the only metal friendly place in town.
Yeah, like I said, they would, if you were a metal band, that's where you would want to play, and that's the only place you pretty much could play, unless it was like some, unless you rented a venue yourself somewhere and played it. But that was like the only place to play if you're a metal band.
It's kind of interesting thinking of Living Sacrifice as being kind of like as big of a deal as they were in Little Rock. Not that they didn't earn it, as
right.
far as just being a great band, but
right.
Considering their message, their lyrical content, you'd almost, in any other music scene that I've been a part of or experienced, bands like that always basically got the short end of the stick on everything.
Right.
What do you think it was about Living Sacrifice that made them more endearing to people in Little Rock specifically?
I really don't know. I think because the thing is, like, the first they played, like, again, DJ's the one to ask, but from what I remember, they played Vino's twice and they were opening for another band. But by the third time they played Vino's, they were headlining. I think with Living Sacrifice, I think from day one, they looked like a metal band. They sounded like a metal band. They acted like a metal band. They're, when you go see a local band, it's, there's the one guy with the short hair. There's the one guy with the long hair. There's the little chubby kid that plays bass. There's this,
Sure.
It looks like a local band. It looks like a garage band. But when Living Sacrifice came out, if you didn't know any better, you would swear that these guys were, signed to some big major label and they're just, the next up and coming thing. And that's how I really feel like they the people around Little Rock reacted to them, especially in the metal scene, because again, and when they came out, their sets, they would play all original songs. Whereas local bands at the time were like, they might have 5 originals and everything else was, okay, we're going to play Enter Sandman, we're going to play Man in a Box, and then we're going to do our original, then we're going to play, this Motley Crue cover, and, but Living Sacrifice never did that. I know, like, maybe the first, year that they were together, they might have thrown in some Believer covers and stuff like that. But, you know,
Deliverance,
I never
stuff
saw
like that.
covers. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, from being in local bands myself, you might only have 3 songs, you know?
Right.
And then they're like, yeah, we need you to play for like 25, 40 to 40 minutes, you know? And you're like, all right, great. Yeah, you'll play anything that you know how to play,
right.
You know?
And they wrote, I don't want to say they wrote songs fast, but I remember that initial, once Jason joined the band, I just remember, you know, me and Chris would be hanging over at, you know, their parents' house and, you know, I'd be there and Bruce would come by to pick up Jason and Bruce and Chris would be talking and Bruce would be talking about, we're writing this song, blah, blah, blah. And he would pick up Chris's guitar because Chris played a guitar at the time and was showing him these riffs and stuff like that. And it's just, they were real motivated early on and they were really, you know, dedicated. And they, you know, like I said, they talked the talk, they walked the walk. They were focused and primed to, you know, become the band that they did at that time, especially early on.
That's awesome. So they're doing that. And you end up getting a job at you said you got a job at a local TV station?
Yeah, I worked at a local Fox affiliate here doing just commercials. Okay. And then from there,
that's money.
Yeah, and then from there, I went to a NBC affiliate doing commercials. And then I got a job at a production house that wasn't news oriented. It was just, they just did commercials and television shows and stuff like that. And then the place I'm working at now that I worked out for 16 years, we do a lot of shows for ESPN, Fox Sports, a lot of outdoor sports stuff like that. So I edit a lot of like Bassmaster Fishing. If you've ever seen that on television, I edit that, you know, and we do all kinds of like steel timber sports, like the lumberjack stuff, the super boat races in Key West. And, you know, we do a lot of like outdoor types stuff.
So like that real high energy stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
cool.
So basically
that's super cool.
It's not in the genre that I would like to be editing, but I love editing. So I don't care what I'm editing. As long as I'm editing, I'm cool. So the music thing and the documentary thing, that's just something I just love to do on the side with my free time. And, you know, a lot of people like to, you know, maybe play video games with their buddies, you know, I like to, you know, do documentaries and stuff like that when I can.
Sure. No, I can definitely relate to that. I've always wanted to get a job just talking, you know.
Well, here you are.
Just chatting with people. Yeah, it's a thankless job, but it's a job. You had linked me to a documentary that you did some time back. And I'm not going to lie to you, I did not get a chance to finish it just because when you sent it to me, I was kind of having the week from hell. And so I didn't. I did manage to watch a good half hour of it. It was the Slow Southern Steel documentary. Is that the first one you did, or are there others?
That was the first one. It took maybe 6 years to do. So I pretty much finished that one in 2011. So 2 years after that one is when I started the Live and Sacrifice one. So that one, you know, I don't know how many people have know about it or seen it, but it's called Slow Southern Steel. You can see it on YouTube. Just type in Slow Southern Steel. It's about the underground Southern metal movement. I did it with a buddy of mine named CT, who's in a metal band called Wake that was signed to Relapse or whatever. And he's the guy that pretty much came to me with that idea. And, you know, he had the whole idea planned out, and he knows all those guys and a lot of the guys, you know, like getting to interview Phil Anselmo. Sure, why not? I'm a huge Pantera fan. I was like, sure, I'm all in, you know, and interviewing Hank 3 and Pepper Keenan and the guys in Lamb of God. Sure. I mean, you know, that was awesome, you know, and get like we, you know, I remember we spent the night at Hank 3's house listening to him play, you know, Hank Senior songs and him making me a Jack and Coke, and we're just bullshitting on the couch, and it was cool. It was that.
And you're sitting there like, how did I get here?
Exactly. I was like, this is awesome. You know, this is right where I want to be. You know, so that was a fun time. So getting to do that.
That's super cool. Getting to do the face-to-face interviews. Because I mean, as a podcaster, I've done a few face-to-face interviews, but it's been one of those things where, you know, this is so convenient. Yeah. You know, like what we're doing right now. You know, versus me having to drive out to where you're at, or you having to drive out to where I'm at. And
it's weird. It's weird because
yeah,
it's convenient, but I would rather be hanging out with you than talking on the phone. But
no doubt. Yeah, this is just fancy talking on the phone, really. But yeah, that's super cool. That's always something that I've kind of always wanted to do, as well as kind of had that more intimate sort of environment where because there are certain social cues that you pick up when you're in a room with somebody versus, because you have to always kind of watch your line of questioning to a certain degree. Because I've signed off of these before and been like, do you think I pissed him off? You know what I mean? Or, just something like, and most of the time it's like, oh no, they're just swatting a fly next to him, or something's going on that I can't see that's irritating them or something, or sometimes I did piss them off, like it just really depends. But that's super cool. Like I really like that documentary because I've always been kind of I don't want to say somebody that doesn't appreciate Southern metal. I do, but for whatever reason, I guess I just got picked on by too many kids in Pantera shirts when I was in high school or something. That's what everybody thinks is probably what my issue is with it. So
it's an acquired taste. It's an acquired taste.
Absolutely, but I did like the perspective on it that you were able to throw out, and kind of give an explanation for something that you love and something that you care about.
Exactly.
And I can definitely see that same sort of dedication in the Living Sacrifice documentary. I've watched it a couple of times, and each time I'm just kind of blown away by some of the more emotional cues that are thrown in there. I remember specifically the scene where the band had just basically broke up for the first. Well, I guess I don't know the early 2000s breakup, and you're like burning the pictures and all that stuff.
It was going backwards. Did you catch up on that? It started with the latter pictures, and then it went back to when they were kids. See, I was trying to tug at the heartstrings.
I loved it. There was one comment. I don't remember who the commenter was, but they're just like, "I'm not crying. You're crying." But it was done really, really well. And I guess this question's probably already answered itself. But what inspired you to take on a project like that with a band like Living Sacrifice? If somebody asked me to make a documentary on Living Sacrifice tomorrow, it would be a very daunting task in the sense that there's been so many people associated with the band. You've got right down to guys that maybe only filled in on a show or two, but the band members, are going to say no, well, you need to include him because, he really helped us out or whatever.
And early on that, my vision of it, like when I'm saying early, 2013, I had visions of interviewing, people from Doug Mann to Scott Albert. I don't know what does Scott Albert call himself with Circle of Dust?
Clayton.
No, I was going to interview him. Yeah. I was going to interview I was really wanting to interview all the bands they went on tour with to get cool band stories. I was really wanting to talk to some of the fans that they helped, because I hear so many stories. The band told me so many stories, and I would see so many comments online about, your music helped me get through a tough time. And I was wanting to reach out to a bunch of people and get that storyline, but I'm only one person, and I did this, on my own time, my own dime. As far as the access to it, and I just could not make a lot of that stuff come available. Like I said, I did Chris Cale from Five Freaking Death Punch. The only reason I interviewed him is because he came through town and played at Verizon Arena in Little Rock, and DJ kind of knows him, so I interviewed him. Same with POD. When Sonny came through town with POD, that's how I got to interview him. When Corey came through with Norma Jean, same way. It's I didn't have the means to fly out to wherever and take a bus trip to so and spend a couple days and wherever to get interviews. And I was going to interview Kirk Bachman in Philadelphia because I was there on a job, whatever, and he had to cancel at the last second, so he knew a guy that did interview there. So that's kind of how all those interviews kind of came about. But the initial the version of how the documentary came about in 2008, when Living Sacrifice played the Village, when they came through with Demon Hunter on that tour, when they got together, I met up with DJ, and that was the first time I saw DJ in like maybe 10 years before that in 2008.
Oh, wow.
So I hadn't seen him in so long. So we kind of reconnected at that show. And that show was really, really cool because, I reconnected with DJ. Jason joined him on stage to play Reject and Reborn at the end of the set. And everyone was hanging out, outside, after the show and stuff. And it felt really, really like the old days, And I remember me and DJ connecting, and we exchanged phone numbers. And he called me up like 4 months after the fact and was like, "Hey, man, let's go have lunch." So we had lunch over at Vino's, and we spent like 2 hours just talking about the good old days. And so we tried having lunch like about every 5-6 months. We would have lunch at Vino's, and after about 5 or 6 of these lunches of talking and telling stories, I remember he was telling me some story. I can't remember what it was, but I remember just listening to it in my head thinking, man, this is an awesome story. I wish I had a camera recording him saying that. Just, I don't know what for, but it would be cool to capture this story. And that's kind of how it kind of in my head morphed. The more times I hung out with DJ and heard these little stories, I was like, man, that'd be a cool, if I can get Bruce's take on this story and then talk to Lance. And I was like, well, maybe I should, maybe a documentary would be something cool to do. So that's kind of how that all came about. And like you said, daunting is an understatement as far as dealing with this band because of all, like you said, all the footage, all the different band members. I didn't even know Jay Stacy was a member of the band until maybe 6 months before I started working on this. I was doing some research online and I saw that Jay was in the band for a year, and that really motivated me because then I was like, let me get on YouTube and type in Living Sacrifice 1998, and then there's a show from Tomfest. There's Jay playing bass. Wow, I did not know that. I would text Jay. It's like, I didn't know you were Living Sacrifice. He's like, yeah, so that motivated me to kind of dig deeper and ask more questions, and that made me realize that I don't know as much as I thought I did originally. So that kind of made me want to. Because I know metal fans can be very, very fickle. I know they can be very, very opinionated. And that was another one of my fears doing this was, am I going to not, mention something that someone's going to call me out on? Or am I going to say the wrong date on this video? No, that wasn't March 2nd. That was March 4th. I was just real nervous. So I wanted to make sure that everything was gone over with a nice fine tooth comb to make sure all the stories and the storylines were all good with, what I had to work with.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of my favorite things about it really was that I liked hearing two band members telling the same story from two different perspectives and kind of getting into the individual's mind about a certain thing, especially there was a point, towards the end where right before the breakup where they, Bruce is like, yeah, I'm out, I'm done. And I'm, if they want somebody else to sing, fine. Like, I'm totally fine with it. I don't even care. Like I'm good to go. We had a problem. We came up with a solution. I'm good to go. But then, then you have Lance being like, I know, but I just kind of wanted to keep doing it, for whatever reason. And like, I had considered myself to be somewhat of an expert on Living Sacrifice, on Zao, and, bands from that era, Embodiment, like all those bands that I kind of cut my teeth on as a metal fan.
Right.
I tried to learn everything that I could possibly learn. But you're right about the call outs. Cause even like in doing this podcast, I've, sometimes it's the bands themselves that'll come back and be like, yeah, you were right about this and this and this, but this other stuff you were way off base on, or whatever. And I always have to just say like, look, I'm real sorry, but I this is just me trying to guess my way through.
It's not
this,
like you did it on purpose,
Right. Yeah. Not maliciously or anything, but people are metal fans, especially, are very, very passionate.
And that was another hard thing about the documentary. You were saying about getting the perspective from different band members about a story, whatever. That was another hard thing about the documentary is a lot of questions I would ask them, Jason would remember, but Bruce, Lance, and DJ wouldn't remember it, what I'm saying? So I'd ask them a question and then like say, DJ would tell me this awesome story. Then when I interviewed Bruce and, Lance, they'd be like, Yeah, I don't remember. It's like stuff like that.
I don't recall.
Yeah. And like my favorite one is the one that Jason told about when he was an archangel and his youth pastor gave him, Bruce's number, Lance's number, and DJ's number. And, Jason said he put the numbers in his pocket, and then morning of that show, he pulled the numbers out and was trying to dial them to invite these guys to the show. And just, the last number he called was Bruce, and Bruce answered it. And they, like, Bruce, Lance, and DJ don't remember any of that. They just remember seeing Archangel play, but they don't remember why they were there. They don't remember any of that. But it was fresh.
Sure.
It was fresh in Jason's mind. And I love that story, And that story in the documentary was probably 4 minutes long, which I had to compress down to, 45 seconds. So,
sure. Well, and one of the biggest things too that I've kind of wondered too, and something that I kind of struggle with as a interviewer myself is that, like, whenever you kind of have to bring up something that's very important to the story, but you're maybe dealing with something, or you're asking somebody that was involved in something that may have been very personal to them, or it could be something that, like, maybe they were pissed off at everybody else for a period of time, and obviously, like, time heals all wounds, right? So they've gotten over it. So it's got to feel a little bit weird to kind of be going down that path again, and being like, well, why did you leave the band, or why, why were you mad at the guys, or why didn't you want to keep going,
right.
Like that sort of thing.
The thing is, like, I feel like I'm really close to the band. I'm probably not as close as a lot of people. I've just always been there, and they know me, but I consider them friends. So yeah, there are parts when I would be interviewing them, I would get to an area where it's like, I'm not a pushy person. I'm not going to push the issue. I could, I'll start getting all sweaty and be like, I'm going to try to ask the question. If they avoid it, then okay, I'm not going to go after it. Cause I don't want them to get mad at me or something. I don't know if that's kind of a good documentary filmmaker, but like when this has nothing to do with what I just said, but when I was interviewing, when I showed Jason the first rough cut of the movie, like I said, that Archangel scene was like 4 minutes long. He wanted me to cut it out completely because he didn't want me. She told me not to show any of the video, none of the audio. I don't know why. He just, like you said, personal. He just said that time in my life was real personal, and I don't want anyone to really see it. But I had to really, really smooth him over to let me use what I did use in the movie, because I felt that story was so important. That video I used was the actual show that Bruce, Lance, and DJ saw Jason at. I kept telling Jason, man, that right there is such an historic video footage. That's the show that they saw you play. That's the first day you met them. That was your first connection and interaction with them, and that set off a chain reaction of where you went down there. And some stuff that, Jason talked that I didn't put in the documentary, but he was talking about how that's like one of those doors that, if he wouldn't have called them up and invited them over, they probably would not have went to that show. They wouldn't have met Jason. They wouldn't have invited Jason to the show. I mean, to be in the band, you know what I'm saying? So there's no telling would Reborn have been what Reborn would have been without Jason and Chris. I don't know, but we don't, you know what I'm saying? It's those cool little side notes that Jason wouldn't have been in POD because he wouldn't have toured with, Living Sacrifice with POD. It's a cool, when you sit back and look at the what ifs, what if I didn't do that? What if, because that was a time period in which no one had cell phones. There was answer machines. If I was going to call you, I just had to be, lucky that you were home for me to call you, to get a hold of you.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that Bruce was home when Jason called him, it was kind of, I don't know, divine intervention.
Fate. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think that some of the transitions that were done too, like you're talking about that Archangel tape. So like you literally just had like, that was the actual tape that you had in your hand that you put in you actually put in the VCR and hit play.
Funny story there is, like I told you before, Chris used to always bring that tape over to my house and we would always watch it. After Jason left the band and joined Living Sacrifice, Chris from time to time would still bring that tape over because, I don't know why we liked him and I liked watching it for some reason. I don't know why. But one day Chris left it over at my house, and for some reason I made a copy of that tape. The next day he came over and got the tape back. A couple of weeks later, he told me that Jason threw away that tape, the original tape. So I've got like the first copy, of that tape.
So it was a surprise to him that you even had it.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
And the funny thing is, I remember I had it, but I just didn't remember. Back then I used to just put like 20 different things on one tape. I knew it was on a tape, but I didn't know which one. I knew it was, between this tape, that tape, somewhere. But trying to remember where it was and what tape it was, and put it on a VCR that just barely worked. It was it was a labor of love to get that story on there.
Well, my next question is actually I'm gonna actually push it over to somebody that commented, Noah Tyler, who I'm gonna throw his question up on the screen, but I'll read it as well. He says, "Great documentary. Did you already have all the footage, pictures, flyers, etc., or did some of the material come from other people?"
All the DJ era stuff. DJ was a pack rat, and he has everything. When you look in the documentary, when I show that voicemail message from Doug Mann saying he wanted to sign the band, DJ had that on a cassette. DJ's got
of course he did.
On that cassette, he had Kurt Bachman calling him up, saying, "Hey, he's had like so many people on that voice message on that tape, and he had all the flyers and he had all those pictures, So when I was doing the documentary, even coming up with the idea, I knew that era of the band I didn't have to worry about that, because between all the footage that I've shot, all the stuff that DJ had, I knew I can just do like a 3-hour documentary on just that era of the band. The Reborn era and the Hammering Process era, I was a little more nervous about, because, at that time in like 2013 or 14, there wasn't a whole, you can't find like random pictures from Reborn. You just see the same 3 or 4 pictures that were in the CD, but you don't see any like live pictures of, and also with videos at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of Reborn era videos. So I was like, okay, I got the music video and I got the 3 or 4 pictures in the CD cover. That's all I have, because the band didn't really have many pictures. And with the Hammering Process era, I was like, okay, I've got the Process video. That's all I got to pull from that, So I didn't worry about it, because I knew at some point, something was going to happen, and it did. Every once in a while, Bruce, God bless him, I would get a box in the mail, and he would say, "Hey, man, I was cleaning up my closet and I came across some of these tapes. I don't know what's on them, but maybe you can use them." I'd pop them in. It was like 10 little mini DV tapes from Reborn tour, like all that stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is gold.
The treasure trove.
Yeah. It's them before they were signed. It was them from 95. Like I just posted on the 30 Years of Sacrifice Facebook page, that New Year's Eve show from 95, where, they're playing, Bruce is singing all those old Living Sacrifice songs. That was one of the tapes that was in there. It's just like, okay, that era of the band's fine. And then like a couple months later, he'd send me another box. Hey, and it was like all the raw tapes from the Hammering Processed video, home video that they released. It was like the raw.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So all the like studio stuff, that's just the raw stuff. And I had the actual master raw tape. So the footage just looked clean, sounded great. I had a kick just pushing play and just watching it and watching them record. It was good. So all that footage and all the pictures. And sometimes if I saw something cool on YouTube that I didn't have, I would reach out to that person, and they would, I've got a couple people who sent me the raw VHS tape, the master tape. And thank God for that again, so it's, and the pictures and stuff. Lance's wife, Laura, hooked me up with a lot of really good pictures that, especially with when Jay was in the band, that I had no footage really of that, but she sent me all those pictures. And again, another box of tapes that Bruce sent me had some, Jay Sacy performances in there. So it was really just all that footage and those pictures just came from different parts and people from different times. And it was, again, I say divine intervention. It felt that way because right when I was like, man, what am I going to do here? Something would pop up and I'd be, oh man, that's thank God. It makes me breathe a little bit easier because I want to tell this story and I want to make sure I have the footage, the pictures. I want to make sure it all, I can tell the story properly instead of just having some guy talk on camera for 2 minutes without seeing any footage. So,
as far as this is kind of a weird question, just something I'm curious about, as a podcaster, as far as using the music, the band's music, was that kind of something where every single time you played a song, you had to get some sort of license agreement to use the band's music?
Well, that's where we're at right now.
I see.
We're trying to get the licensing. So that's why a lot of people are asking about, when's it going to be released on DVD or when can it be, hold on, my battery's getting a little low. And that's where we're at right now. Basically we wanted to get the film done and we just wanted people to watch it. And then I think with the, that's where we are right now. Just trying to get the licensings for those songs. Cause it's almost their entire catalog, in a movie, so.
Cause that's all owned by Capitol, I think.
Right.
So yeah. And, from other bands I've heard that, that have been trying to get their albums re-released, be it on vinyl or something like that. It's Capitol definitely very protective of all of their stuff.
Right.
So you got to always make sure you're playing that the right way.
Right. Yeah.
We do have another question from YouTube I'm going to throw out here. This is from 1984 MGW. Do you know anything about that unreleased Hammering Process song? It sounds like a Reborn demo. Was that the first song that they wrote for Hammering Process or last, perhaps?
That was, from what the band told me, that was a song that when they were going into the mixing it was recorded for the Hammering Process. When they went into the mixing process of the album, this was right around the time when they were using, digital, right when digital was kind of, just now coming up. And so I don't know if it was on Pro Tools. It got lost in the mix. The file got messed up somehow and they could not retrieve it. So when they got hooked up with Jeremiah, who produces and records them now, they remembered having that song. So they gave him the file to see if he could do anything with, the way technology is now. And he worked diligently and was able to, open up the file and capture the file and, mix it back. So it was pretty much a lost song that they recorded for the Hammering Process. And I just thought it'd be cool to put it in as the credits. I just thought it was kind of a cool, way of just kind of, bookending the movie or, I just thought it was a cool song to use.
It definitely generated a lot of talk, I know on the on the Living Sacrifice fan groups and all that stuff. Everybody's like, "What is that song? Where can I find that song?"
Which is weird because it got released in 2017 on the
compilation,
and my compilations. That's why I was weird that people were asking about it because I was like, "Well, didn't you know about it?" Because I felt like at that point, I remember when they said they were going to release it. And I remember when it got released, there was a little buzz about it, because it's an awesome song.
Definitely. Yeah. And I remember racking my brain because I was like, I know this band. Why do I not know this song? Like I was racking my brain. I couldn't figure it out. And then I just let everybody else fill me in on it. It's kind of what I do. Kind of what I do now is just like, yeah, okay, cool. Just, keep that in the back of my brain for if somebody decides to answer that question. But no, yeah, it was like, I loved the use of music, throughout because in a way you're telling a visual story, you're telling a audible story. But I think just being able to physically hear the evolution of the band, because
definitely.
I got into Living Sacrifice probably in the Hammering Process, Conceived in Fire era.
Mm-hmm.
And, ended up having to go backwards. And and there was a time where those tapes, or not tapes, but the first three records were getting kind of hard to find. I know that Solid State had reissued them at one point, but it was just like a reissue. As far as I understand, I think the band owns still those three first recordings.
Yep.
And I actually have those on cassette tape now too, which is just kind of a weird nerdy thing I decided to share. But it was hard for me trying to imagine what those sounded like, because I think when I first started listening to Living Sacrifice, they were probably like, the internet wasn't really what it is now. So it's not like I could just I could download a song or something off of like a Napster or something, whatever people used to download songs back then. I'd listen to like a song or two and like it wouldn't even sound like the same band. And so having a documentary like this is something that I really wish that I would have had way back when, because it gives so much context to everything. And I think the movie wouldn't even be the same even if you didn't have the music in it.
True, very true. I mean, and like you said, you can hear that evolution of the band. You can hear, from that first album, which, I remember at the time, people saying it was like a Slayer ripoff, but it sounded so it sounded awesome, and they got rammed by being a, Slayer sound-alike band that, I feel like they wanted to do a 180 on non-existent and just say, you know what, we're not a Slayer ripoff band. We're take us seriously because we're, a freaking awesome metal band. And, I was thinking about it the other day, I was like, personally for me, Living Sacrifice has never put out a shitty album that they just kind of went through the motions. Like, all right, let's go in the studio. But okay, here you go. Yeah, it's a good song. Okay, knowing the guys, number one, seeing the footage of them in the studio, because I pretty much have footage, with the exception of the first album and Reborn. There's footage of them in the studio recording these songs and stuff. Seeing the passion, the dedication that they have when they're writing music, recording the music, they put everything they can into those songs, and they're very, very proud of their music. I'm proud of their music. I mean, it's just, I put them up against any other metal band out there personally, and it's a shame that, in the early years that they got held back a little bit because of being tagged Christian metal, and I feel like that really held them back a lot,
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, that type of stigma is not put on bands now, but back then it really was. And I think that maybe that probably is the reason why they drove themselves to keep, outdoing themselves with each album, because, they're trying to say, hey, no, we're a metal band. Listen, we're good. Look,
yeah.
Stop.
We actually know what good metal is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted people, they want to be known for being a metal band, not a Christian metal band, not, and I think Bruce said it great in the movie. And I love that quote about, we're just a metal band with Christian beliefs. That's, to me, that makes sense,
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think really separated them from a lot of the other Christian bands is you had bands that were hyper evangelical, which, basically just succeeded in pissing a whole bunch of people off. And then you had the bands that were like totally fine to go play Cornerstone and go play all these venues or whatever. But when you'd ask them about it, they'd be like, oh no, I mean, they're really only like one of us really believes that or that sort of thing. And it's not even that those bands aren't good. It's just Living Sacrifice is one of those weird examples where like you can be a fan of just metal in general and love Living Sacrifice. But if you did take the spiritual element out of their music, it would lose something, Oh,
I totally agree. Yeah, totally. They weren't shoving it down, I don't know. They weren't shoving it down people's throats. It was just good music. And then the lyrics were just, positive and uplifting. I remember I talked to, Bruce and Lance in the movie about, about that stigma. And I always bring up the fact that, like a band like Slayer, Slayer's not known as, they don't have the tag of satanic metal Slayer, they're
just Slayer.
They're Slayer. They're a metal band, but for some reason with Living Sacrifice, like Bruce said in the documentary, they are always that label, that Christian metal label is always put right on the front. Right before you hear the name Living Sacrifice, you're going to hear the words Christian metal band Living Sacrifice.
That's correct.
Yeah. and again, it's not a bad thing. It's just, it's one of those, okay, why are they considered Christian metal and this band is it's not considered satanic metal. You know, it's not a thing. Satanic metal is not a thing. You know, it's like Christian metal is not a thing. It's just, you know, their message, just because their message is a little bit of positive. It's, I don't know. I don't know.
Sure.
It bothers my mind.
Well, you know what? I think now would be a good time. So David provided me with a couple of clips for that didn't make the final cut. And I want to play one of those real quick because it's literally exactly about what we're talking about. So I'm actually going to, even though he's not here, I'm going to turn the interview over to Bruce from this clip. So check this out. This is really, really, really cool.
We don't know any of this stuff. I mean, we were, like I said, we were kids. So yeah. So I mean, Doug, the guy that signed us, you know, he had been around a bit more, and he knew. And he is a good guy, and one of the good guys. And in fact, you know, he tried to do something, you know, with integrity, but he ended up selling out to a partner, and then that partner took over his record label, and then he left. And shortly after he left is when we left the record label. But yeah, he was super honest with DJ on the front end. He was like, hey, you know, I want you to know, you know, there's nothing Christian about the Christian music industry or the Christian music business. It's a business. And you hear that, you know, when you're 18, 19, you're like, oh, okay, you know, well, that's good to know. But, you know, and probably what affected, our outlook as a whole or as a band is that, you know, this is just hard work, you know, and not everybody's straightforward, and, you know, not everybody has the best intentions, even though they, you know, just because somebody says they're a Christian doesn't mean, you know, they're a good person. I mean, you know, when somebody, to this day, when somebody puts that label and that tag on on their introduction or their business or whatever it is that they're trying to do, it's immediate red flag. It's like, it's because it's like they're using the name of God to create an integrity or a track record of honesty that they haven't built yet, you know, because when, you know, how you build rapport in business is having a track record of honesty, being, you know, on the up and up with anybody you deal with. And that's where that comes from. Well, some people in, you know, that establish Christian business or establish businesses and say, oh, well, you know, I'm a Christian contractor. I'm not going to rip you off, you know, and I've got an awesome sign with a little ichthus fish on my contractor sign. It's kind of like they're using that image to say, oh, you can trust me because we share the same faith, or I'm a Christian. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of that.
Yeah, and the thing is, that part in there, Bruce is talking about, and again, it's something I didn't put in the documentary, is DJ told a story about when they got signed to REX Music, that Doug Mann, the president of REX, pulled DJ aside and said that to him. Said, hey, DJ, I just want to let you know that there's nothing Christian about the Christian music business, you know. And I asked all the guys about that, and they weren't sure what Doug was getting at. You know, they gave their ideas, but I think what Bruce said is kind of what Doug was probably mentioning is, you know, don't think, you know, everything is, it is a business, and there are things that are just like the regular music industry. So, you know, you might get cheated out of money. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the underlying story there was, but that's what that was from, was something that Doug told DJ when they first got signed.
Yeah, I mean, and I can definitely understand where he's coming from on that, because, like, and you actually there was a part in the documentary, I think it was Corey from Norma Jean who said, or I'm sorry, just Corey Putman, Corey Brandon, not Corey from Norma Jean, but anyway, but he said something similar, like, you know, you don't get like a Christian plumber or a Christian, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
But the funny thing is that you do, and I think it was interesting that Bruce described it as a red flag, because, like, we've got, so I'm from just south of St. Louis, And so we have a pretty religious base. You know, further down, we've got the Jesus billboards and all that stuff. And you see it all the time, like used car salesmen, but they've got the cross, and we're Christians, and we're going to give you the best deal because we're Christians, and all that stuff. And it's like, in my experience, it's always been like, yeah, just run away screaming, like, and that's not to say that everybody that does business and is a Christian is bad, but like, if you're good at doing business, be good at doing business,
Right. And again, Live and Sacrifice, I will say this: they've never shied away from their beliefs and what they stand for. They've never, they probably had the opportunity to, because they were trying to, like I said, I feel like it held them back, but they could have just easily, like, on one of their records, just say, you know what, we're going to denounce this, and we're going to try and make us or change our look and try to get our record label to kind of make us, I don't know. They never did that. The same dudes that I remember from 1989 are the same dudes that I know now. They're the exact same mindset. They're, they kept their integrity and their beliefs intact the whole entire time. And that to me, that I've got so much respect for all those guys for staying true to their what they believe, and not feeling forced into, especially with the metal scene, not being forced to, go along with what everyone else is doing. Oh, everyone else is, doing this. Okay, well, we're going to do this too. Because there were so many stories that DJ would tell me, Bruce would tell me, about going on tour with a lot of these, like Cannibal Corpse, for crying out loud, or Malevolent Creation. It's like, oh my God, it's like, or going to like, I think someone in the Q&A was talking about when they went to Milwaukee Metal Fest. It's like, here's Living Sacrifice, probably the only Christian metal band playing,
right,
in the sea of all this, satanic, whatever. I don't even say
debauchery. Who knows?
The complete 180 of what Living Sacrifice is, and and here they are, brave enough to say, screw all that. We're a metal band. We're here. We're gonna play.
Right, they do belong there because they're a metal band, just like any other metal band that's there. And
exactly.
And I think that over the years they really did carve out their right to be there. And I always thought it was really interesting too. And I like that you kind of covered the rise and fall, and then the re-rise. I mean, it's such an inspirational story. It's a story as old as time, right? There's the life, the death, the resurrection. I'm not trying to make some sort of analogy here, but it is just one of those things that, a story that people find really inspiring. And I thought it was super. I thought it was very well done, the way it was told, with a specific narrative like that.
Good. And that was another thing that I admired about that band, is the fact that they always, I can't. I mean, how many bands do you know that have, like, okay, they formed a career with DJ. DJ left, one of the founding members. Okay, they regroup with different guys. They come out with an album that is bigger than when DJ was in the band. And again, after Reborn, Jason and Chris leave. They regroup. They come. New members, they come back with another amazing album that's even better than Reborn. It's like, I can't think of any bands that keep their trajectory of quality music on that path with losing, key members here and there, and just, because I feel like, losing key members, I mean, the air is going to be taken out of you, a little bit when you're in a band. It's like, oh, now what do we do? Are we going to be as good as without them? I don't know, but that, again, that's a true testament of all those guys, is just the quality of what they put together and how serious they take the music.
Yeah. I mean, and you want to talk about, divinely inspired to a certain degree. I mean, there were so many moments during that film through the band's career where they're like, oh God, now what are we going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. I can get this person to show up and play this, play on this tour.
Right.
I can get, you had Corey on there at one point being all like, and I'm supposed to be filling in for Jason Truby on guitar. He's like, you can't just you can't just do that. You know, like
exactly.
the dude's a virtuoso. You know, you can't just get up there and play his parts. And yeah, there was so much of that, and it is weird because with me getting into the band later, when I was introduced to Living Sacrifice, it was Bruce, Rocky, Lance, Matt, Arthur. They had the most members, I think, at that point. But they, and so it was that was Living Sacrifice. So when I started looking back on the history of the band and realizing how many different people had been in it and how consistent the sound had stayed, throughout all that.
Oh, definitely.
Really the only huge major change you had was between Inhabit and Reborn.
Right.
And since Reborn, you can go listen to Ghost Thief and be like, oh yeah, this is the same band that put out Reborn. It doesn't sound like that. It's obviously more complex, and they've now, it seems like recently they've started adding more elements of the older records kind of into their newer stuff.
There's a funny story, again, it's something I didn't include in the movie, when I talked to Matt, and he was talking about the first time he heard Living Sacrifice. It was like maybe 96, maybe. It was, probably a year before Reborn came out, but their set basically by that point was 90% Reborn songs, Reborn material. So they were playing at somewhere in, I can't remember where they're from. I feel like an idiot. Fort Smith, Arkansas. And Matt said he went to go see them. Him and his buddies saw Living Sacrifice play. He said he was blown away. The energy, the music, the sound, it was awesome. He said after the show, he wanted to buy, a CD because he was so into, what he just saw. So he went to the merch table. He said he went to the merch table, and the only thing, since this is before Reborn was out, so the only thing that they had for sale was Inhabit, so he didn't know any different. So he was like, okay, yeah, I'll get this. Living Sacrifice, cool. He says he's driving home, and he pops the CD in, and he listens after about 30 seconds. He's like, man, this ain't the same band we just saw. He said it was good, but it wasn't his type of metal. But it was just the way he told it. It was funny because it was just kind of like you said, it was just such a 180 from what they were to what they became.
Yeah,
and it, I don't know.
There's a part in the documentary where Bruce is talking about how whenever he first started singing that they were going on tour and he was singing Inhabit songs. Was there ever any video footage of that? That's something that I've always been kind of curious about, because I've never seen. I mean, I know they re-recorded. I think it was Enthroned from Non-Existent, but it would be interesting to see what Bruce sounded like over the Inhabit songs.
Go, like I said, the on the 30 Years of Sacrifice, the Facebook page. I don't know, a couple days ago, I uploaded that. There was a video from '95 where they're playing in Benton, Arkansas, and it was literally maybe 3 months after DJ had left the band. They're playing a show, so pretty much 90% of the songs are stuff off of Inhabit, Non-Existent, and their first album. And it's fun to watch because I remember seeing them at that point, but it never really clicked that, Bruce is singing DJ's vocals. It didn't click until just recently. I'm like, well, that's actually kind of cool because they don't play any of those songs now. Enthroned is like the only song that they play from that era. So it's really cool. I would check it out because it's like you hear Bruce singing Violence from the first album. It's like, wow. And that, Breathing Murder is one of the songs from Inhabit that he sings. And it's like, it's just, it's cool, and I would love, someone brought it up in one of the comments, that Living Sacrifice should do the compilation CD of, Bruce singing, like redo all those DJ era songs with Bruce singing them. I thought that was kind of cool, idea, but
I think it's cool too. But something else I think is cool too, or cool as well, is that they have also recently, they played a show in Arkansas before, it was before COVID. It was like right before that. And, cause I remember I couldn't make it for whatever reason. Maybe my boss would let me off work or something dumb.
Right.
But, I know they had DJ come out and sing on a whole bunch of songs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they started kind of playing the older material as well. And, I don't know. I just thought that was cool too. Just seeing him, but up there doing it again, and kind of giving those songs kind of their their time to shine. Because I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people maybe that are fans of the band now aren't even necessarily aware of the older material.
Right. And again, that's another reason why, like, when I did the documentary, I really wanted to give and pay respect and pay, homage to all the eras of the band, because I always see the band as, this era, I collectively it's Living Sacrifice, but I always see it as the DJ era, because I feel like the DJ era, I could have easily just, breezed over that and just, hey, they got together as buddies. They, released a couple albums, and then they lost their original singer, and then they did Reborn, and they were reborn as a band. I could have
done the whole movie about Reborn. Yeah,
exactly. I could have glossed over that, but I wanted to me, that was important because it really was. I mean, DJ really did start the band. It was his inception. He just was like, I want to start a band. You guys come with me. Let's do this. And I really wanted to show the story of, the fact that they've known each other since they were little kids, and I think that another is, and again, I wanted to pay respect to Reborn, even though it was just one album, it was still an awesome album that, kind of catapulted them and opened the door for a lot of their fans who didn't know them, before then, and then the Hammering Process, that era of the band, it's kind of like you said, you were introduced to them around that point.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's kind of, with the exception of Matt not being in the band anymore. I mean, basically that era of Living Sacrifice has been around longer than, the other ones prior to it, but it's all important. Those first three albums are just important as Reborn, which is just as important as the Hammering Process, which is just as important as what they're doing now.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I'll never forget the first thing I said whenever I heard the Hammering Process. I looked over at a buddy of mine. We were like probably halfway through Flatline, and I was like, holy shit, this is better than Soulfly, I think is what I said. And like, because I was just completely blown away, because we were in high school, we were teenagers, and we we were part of kind of the youth group, but we were metalheads, so we didn't really fit in with the music that everybody else liked. Right. At that time, we were a little rough around the edges, and so a band like Living Sacrifice was just so massively influential. And I think
how did you hear about them?
Well, so basically just the internet. I know I had started listening to I got into kind of the hardcore bands from like the hardcore bands in California, like Focused and like those sort of bands. And so I was always and this is one of those situations where I was kind of a down and out kind of like loser type person that didn't really have a lot of friends in high school. And I got kind of more or less adopted by this Christian group of kids. And they're like, no, it's cool. And you're not a loser. And, like really indoctrinated me kind of into what they had going on. I think that's a pretty common story with a lot of people. But I remember, meeting a couple of guys that listened to kind of harder music, and they were all about like Zao and Living Sacrifice. So the first time I had heard Living Sacrifice, it was a little too hard for me, because I was like, oh, I don't know, man. Like the hardest I'll go is Slipknot, and this is like way harder than that. This is like, this is crazy. But once I had become more accustomed to it, I got really, really, really into Zao. Like I'm huge into them, and still am. And then people are like, oh, you like Zao? Well, how come you haven't listened to Living Sacrifice? So I listened to a couple of songs off of Reborn, and I want to say it was Something More was the actual first song I ever heard by Living Sacrifice. And my God, if that's not a song to start on, that is just a go for the throat, thrash song, with gnarly vocals,
Exactly.
And I think Threatened was the other one that was. So I was like, okay, so there's like finesse to this too, like they're talented and heavy,
Right.
And so I actually bought. I went to the store, and by that time, this must have been like 2002, maybe, like right before they broke up. And I went to a record store and I bought Hammering Process, and I bought Conceived in Fire. And I think whatever album Zao had out at the time, I think it was like Parade of Chaos. and it was at a Christian bookstore, so like each album cost like $18.99 each, like. And dude, we destroyed those CDs. Like we were kids. We didn't take care of them. So like I've had to rebuy some of those albums 2-3 times now. But never. I don't think I've ever spent in rebuying them as much as I spent initially on those purchases. But I mean, it just absolutely blew me away. I mean, I remember just sitting there. There was a girl that I was sort of dating. At least I thought we were dating. That was driving me home from school at that time. And she's like, "Oh, you got this new CD. You've been sitting there looking at the liner notes all day. Like, let's go ahead and pop it in." And so we're like driving down the road in her little like Camaro, listening to the Hammering Process, and we probably got 3 or 4 songs in before she's like, "Oh, okay, that's nice. What's on the radio?" And then we definitely
go back to reading the liner notes.
Yeah, we definitely weren't dating then. After that, she's like, "This guy's a psycho." But the liner notes were amazing. I love the layout for the Hammering Process. I loved all the band pictures. They look so cool. And they always had this really, really cool line to describe their website. So at the bottom of the Hammering Process, if you look on the CD, it'll say like the metal onslaught continues at livingsacrifice.com. But then if you look at the liner notes for Conceived in Fire, you look down there and it says the metal onslaught destroys you at livingsacrifice.com. And I always thought that was so cool. That's part of why I became a podcaster, because like I was such a nerd about liner notes, about having to know what all the lyrics were, and trying to match them up, to the songs. Like nowadays I can listen to a screaming vocalist and know everything that he's saying like the first time.
Right.
But back then it was like learning a new language.
Yeah.
And so it was really that was kind of some of my first experiences with that. I had my CDs confiscated, my Living Sacrifice CDs confiscated by a teacher at one point, that was like concerned and like recommended to the principal that I talk to the counselor because the music was so scary, And then the counselor actually looked at the CDs and he was like, "Oh, I was reading the words of the songs and like a lot of this stuff's like actually like really positive." Like it was such a, he's like, "No, I think it's good. I think he needs to keep checking this kind of stuff out." He's like, I've seen a lot of heavy metal stuff out there before, and this is definitely very surprising and different than what I'm used to.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Living Sacrifice, and obviously I've been a super fan ever since. Anytime you're persecuted for liking something, you like it forever.
Yeah, you like it even more. Yeah, definitely.
Like, even if it sucks, like if somebody tells you like, "Hey, don't listen to this," turn it up even louder.
It's funny that you mentioned liner notes because on the band's second CD, Non-Existent, I remember I was hanging out with Chris, Jason's brother, and it was right when, they just recorded it and, Jason got sent, I guess, a copy of it, whatever. And Chris came over to my house and was telling me, "Yeah, I just heard Jason just got in the new record, Non-Existent." And he was like, it sounds a lot different. And we were talking about it. And then he says to me, he says, "Yeah, and they put you in the thank yous." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And Chris was like, No. You're not like in the small print thank yous. You're like off to the side where all the big thank yous. It says, videographer David Lipke. And I remember getting really excited because I was like, "Wow, this is awesome." Then when the CD came out, I went and bought it and I opened it up and I was like, and I never told the band this, but from that point on, it was just like, all right, you've got my loyalty forever now, because I feel like I'm part of you guys now. Guys. It really motivated me to just like talking back earlier. I said my dream was to be a music director for MTV and all that stuff. It's like I felt like at that moment in time, I felt like, all right, I made it. There's my name on a Living Sacrifice CD. It's
I'm this band's videographer now. Yeah,
But the air was I got deflated when Chris came back from California and was telling me, "Yeah, we just shot a music video for Reborn." And I just remember internally thinking to myself, "Cool, I could have done a music video for you guys." It's kind of what I was priming myself up for doing that. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's like,
Like, come on, man! I could have blown an air hose in your guys' face.
Yeah,
like, come
exactly.
on. Like,
I probably could not have done it any better than what that video was, but I don't know.
So you know how we had the nails being driven into the wood for putting the pictures. Picture was that you hammering the nails?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had that idea like when I was thinking of originally I did that for like I don't know how many years ago when I did like it was a real teaser for the documentary. I just had this idea of, because I feel like the Reborn album is probably like their most iconic album for the band. Like when you think of, it's just so iconic, that with the nails and the faces and stuff. So I remember I was like, let me do something that, I was going to tease the movie with, with nothing but imagery, and I wanted people to like see that imagery and be like, oh, wait a minute, that looks like Reborn. Wait, I can hear, it's like, and I just, so me and my buddy, we got together and, he shot it and I just, hammered the nails into some old fencing that I had laying around that looked pretty old.
I thought it was awesome. Like, honestly, I would love to cut that at the beginning of the existing Reject video. Like, it's so cool. Like, thematically, it matches up really, really well.
Right.
And that was one of my favorite touches. Whenever I first started watching the trailers for the documentary, I was just completely blown away. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be an audio video treat,
Cool.
Because there's something about the fact that like when I got into bands like Living Sacrifice and bands like Embodiment and Zayo, I was a teenager, so I couldn't drive to Arkansas to see Living Sacrifice. I tried driving to Cornerstone. This is actually really annoying. So I wasn't quite out of high school yet when Living Sacrifice played their last Cornerstone. Yeah. And I didn't know that it was their last Cornerstone. And it was going to be my first Cornerstone, but at the last minute, my parents just decided that they're like, we just don't think you're ready for that yet to be gone for a whole week, and I was like, yeah, but it's a Christian festival, Mom. And she's like, right. Yeah, well, I remember what the Jesus freaks were like in the 70s. And, so I don't know about all that, and so they made me stay home. And then the next year, we're getting ready to go, and we had already been announced. Because I remember telling my mom, I was like, the band that I was looking forward to seeing the most there is they're broke up now. Thanks a lot, Mom. like one of those. And thankfully, I've seen Living Sacrifice several times since then. But it's one of those back then it absolutely in my teenage heart felt like the absolute end of the world.
Right.
And I was thinking about that when I was watching the documentary. I was like, oh yeah, this was the year. So seeing footage from that show was kind of unreal for me. Like, wow.
It's funny because Bruce has a similar story about Van Halen.
Oh yeah,
where Van Halen with David Lee Roth was coming to Little Rock for 1984 tour, and his parents wouldn't let him go. So of course, fast forward, David Lee Roth leaves the band, and Sammy Hagar joins, and they come back to Little Rock, and he's like, not
the same, yeah,
not the same,
That's apparently how. So were you surprised? There's one other question I'm asking about, because we're gonna have to wrap up at some point, but or maybe do a part 2 or something later. But the one of the funniest parts of the documentary, like I laughed out loud, like full belly laugh, when it's the interview with Rocky, and he's talking about when Reborn came out, and everybody's like, "Oh, Reborn was so good, it was so great," or whatever. And Rocky's like, "This ain't Living Sacrifice. This is."
When you can even hear me if you listen. You can hear me in the background, because when he said he did not, I honestly thought he was just being a smart. He was joking.
Right.
I was like, okay, you didn't like it? Oh, okay. Because again, like you said, everyone likes it. And I will add a little nugget to that. Jason did not like that part of the movie. So.
Oh, really? He was mad that Rocky said that. That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want Jason to be upset that I let that out, but Jason was saying, he should have kept that too. I don't know. He was just he wanted me to actually maybe take it out of the movie, but I was I had to smooth it over. I was like, look, not everybody liked Reborn, and I said that soundbite goes right into it. Lance says right after it, where he says, not everybody liked it, you know, so.
Yeah. And you got to think too, this is a person's opinion. Like, this is something that as a music reviewer, I deal with a lot, is when I say I don't like something.
Right.
Now, I'm not as important of an individual as like Rocky Gray is, but it is one of those things where opinions are just opinions. They're not right or wrong.
Right.
Exactly. It's literally just like, yeah, I heard that record, and for whatever reason, it just didn't connect with me.
Right.
And so, like, I thought that was really interesting and really kind of valuable, but also kind of definitely played as a comedic scene anyway. You know what I mean? Because obviously the vast majority of people are going to say, "Oh yeah, landmark album." 10 out of 10. I'll buy it. I'll keep buying it as long as it's available.
Right.
So I don't know. I thought that was incredibly interesting just to see kind of that dynamic there.
It was awesome. I like I said, I wanted to put it in the movie just because it was such a, whoa, wait a minute. Cause Rocky was such a huge Living Sacrifice fan before he was in the band. I mean, he was, like some of the shots, towards the end where I see, where Jason stage dives and Rocky's holding him up. I mean, I feel like that's such a foreshadowing moment, of Living Sacrifice history, and Rocky said numerous times that, his favorite, he feels blessed to be playing in his favorite, being a member of his favorite band, and it's like, I don't think Rocky was not dissing the music or any of what was I think he was, Rocky at that point was really into the, I think Rocky likes like Non-Existent more than anything.
He likes death metal, man. You listen to the other bands he's played in, like Soul Embrace. That's like all, really death metal type stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes total sense. I also got more of the impression that was his initial take on Reborn.
Exactly.
And that it had likely grown on him after that,
Yeah, because there was a hate, because a little bit before he even answered that, there's a store called Hastings that used to be around where you can listen to the snippets of whatever. And he said he was at Hastings and he was listening to it, and he was just like, oh man, this, that was before what I used in the soundbite, but that's, so
yeah, just
interesting.
And speaking of that, like with everybody was joking. So whenever we were kind of prepping up for the Q&A, it was funny too, because like the band members, Bruce especially, kept going back and forth when we were talking between being like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is what the plan is. Also, did you get a chance to watch it yet? Because everybody really wanted, like, they all seemed so concerned about the fact that it was 2 hours and like that was going to be, too long. And I was like, I kind of got to the end of it and I was like, I could have watched another hour of that.
Right. Bruce, early on, Bruce, when I would send Bruce rough cuts, just to see what I thought, man, you got to cut it down, man. You got to cut it down. It's, it can't be this long. We got to cut something. And I would like, okay, I'd cut little things here and there, but then he would want me to put stuff in. And I'm like, I can't, it's because there's some stuff in there that I'm like, I could cut that out, but I don't want to cut that out. I'm not going to cut that out, so it's, I think it was, I think the end from beginning to like last part of the credits, I think it's 2 hours and 12 minutes, I don't know.
It wasn't bad at all. And everybody's been joking of saying, release the Lipke cut, let's see the director's cut of this. How much more material is there?
I probably edited out at least 30 more extra minutes, but to be honest, a lot of it was more of the DJ era stuff. And a lot of it was kind of, like I said, I was heavily a part of the band back in the DJ years. I had a lot of footage. DJ had a lot of stuff. So when I was initially editing it, those stories, and it was a lot easier when I was editing because it was like, oh, I got footage for that. Oh, they're talking about this. Oh, I can put this. So the bulk was so huge. I had like, originally like where they were playing in front of the nurses, I had that in there,
right.
And then it goes to when they played live for the first time. Then, okay, when they go to the recording for that first album, there's 2 minutes of them talking about going there. And then when they go to record at Non-Existent, there's 3 minutes there. It's like, it got to a point where it's like 45 minutes in, it's like, okay, get on with it. Okay, you record, okay. So I just kind of like, was like, this is great stuff, but, and that's why I released it, leading up to the documentary to kind of, it was like an outtake that this was in the movie, but, because of time constraints, I took it out. So, I mean, like I said, to me, I feel like I cut out all the right stuff, and I would love to put out an extended cut, but I feel like it would just, for me, it would be like, it's just a little too long,
Hey, a bonus disc. They did that with the Zayo thing, because the Zayo. Did you ever watch that documentary on Zayo?
I've not seen the whole thing.
So it was 3.5. I think it was like 3.5 hours long. And there was still an additional like 45 minutes of bonus footage, at the end of that. Just like, and a lot of it was just extended versions of the interviews that she'd already seen.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, the bar for me is like 4 hours is as far as I'll go. But when you're cramming 30 years of history into 2.5 hours, I even have trouble with that on podcasts. Like when I get to a band that's been around for multiple decades, there's so much to talk about.
Right.
But I've also got to think about, like, people listen to this podcast on their way to work, or they're, like that sort of thing. So like, how do we condense this down,
Right.
But go ahead.
I was going to say, I probably would have, if I would have had more like video of like them recording like Reborn and stuff, it probably would have, I probably would have extended that out some more. But, basically all the footage I had for the, those errors of the latter errors, it's like I pretty much utilized everything I had, so I'm trying to remember stuff that I cut out that was towards the latter part, but it might have been just like a sentence here or a sentence there, or like you said, I just cut down an interview that you've already seen to, it was a minute, but now it's 30 seconds. So It's not like groundbreaking. Wow. They should have left this in. It was just like, okay, he's basically saying the same thing for longer, so.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. In the spirit of that, I'm going to go ahead and play that other clip since it's here. And I think I want to say something about this clip before we play it too, is that I found this very interesting.
This clip was, again, this is something that me and Bruce touched upon when we were talking about when Bruce was wanting to leave the band. You know, it's funny because like, when DJ left the band, he left on his own accord because, pressure from family and, all that stuff. And Jason left because, he wanted to be able to, start a family and pay his bills and stuff like that. And Bruce always said to me, is like, when he quit because, he loved going on tour. He loved, the band. Bruce at that point was like, band father. He was, making dealing with the record labels, dealing with the merch, dealing with the promoters, he had all those pressures on him on top of playing in the band, and he said all those pressures just, he was just so burnt out, with that and staying away from his family for so long with no rewards from it all. He's just the pressures of it. So that's basically what this clip is just him talking about that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to pull that up though. This gives so much context too, to why he was done, and getting up there in the years myself, I can completely relate.
The other part of that was like, we were like 20 grand in debt. Like we were not making enough money to support ourselves. Or, I'd basically set us up as a business. We were making salary while we were on the road and just basically paying ourselves. Everybody got the same amount, what we could. I had set us up on health insurance, just all this stuff that like, all this adult stuff that you have to do because, you've got kids and, you got to have health insurance or whatever. Everybody had health insurance. Back then, health insurance was cheap. I mean, it was like nothing. But we weren't paying our merch bill because we were paying ourselves. So that was a big bummer for me. And I think, looking back, if I don't know, I was just, because we still had a record to do. And so we didn't talk about it. We weren't going to tell anybody we were breaking up because we were just going to do their next record. But we also decided we're going to keep playing and pay off our bills. So, we all kind of went our separate ways after that tour, but we kept booking, big shows like down in Texas or wherever, just regionally, and we'd hit two or three shows in a weekend, and we'd pay ourselves a little bit and then take all that money and pay off our debt, which I was really happy about. I was not good, trying to manage this thing as a business and be in that type of debt. Even though it doesn't sound like a lot now, it's nothing compared to what the type of merchandise bands purchase today and the type of debt they get into. But back then it was a big deal, because I felt like it was like $20,000. I felt like it was basically my responsibility.
That's rough. I remember at one point being in a band that I know we had like I think 600. If we had more than $600 to the band's name, we were like thought we were rock stars. Like if you could imagine, because like you'd play like a local show, and you'd be like super stoked if you sold 20 T-shirts,
Wow.
or something like that. You're like, oh my god, dude, I think we're gonna take off. Like there's like, yeah, anybody buy the demo though? No, nobody bought that. But they liked our T-shirt design.
Yeah. Well, that was I thought that was a real, and the fact that Bruce felt so bad about, having that debt on the band, is like they went out and purposefully to go out and play these big shows on the weekend just so they could pay back their debt. So when the band was over, everything was, clean and clear. To me, I think that's damn well respectable as far as, because they could have just said, well, fuck that, we're done. So
yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah. And there's plenty of bands that take that route. And honestly, a lot of the times you wouldn't even blame them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, look, we're sorry. We'd have paid you if we could.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that is very respectable. And, I think that, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this too is that, like this comment that just popped up here. This was a passion project for you.
Yeah.
To the point where, as much as big of a fan as I am of some bands, I couldn't imagine putting in the amount of work that went into this,
Like I said, I've been such a fan and been a part of them for so long. It's like, it's almost like I've been working on this since 1989, if that makes sense. It's like, anytime I've seen them live or anytime I've talked to them, my head was always, going as ideas and stuff. It'd be cool, man, we should do this, but nothing, years go by, nothing ever gets done. But, it just got to a point where I feel like, I'm just turned 50. I think I've always wanted to do this movie. And it's just like, I've got grandkids now, and it's like, I want to put this chapter behind me and say, okay, this is something I've wanted. It's like a bucket list. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long, long time. I'm going to mark that off the bucket list, so, but yeah, it was definitely a labor of love. It was definitely a long process. And I definitely had to keep my, not get all worried about, certain, where am I going to get this footage from? Just, I did not work myself up. I approached this documentary, more calmly than I normally would do on a project of this size. It's, I should send you a picture of the timeline of my edit. It's like, I can look at it now and it hurts my brain. And at the time when I was building it, it was like, man, just chill out, we'll get it done, and just, don't worry about it.
Just keep trucking along. Yeah.
Keep trucking, because there are times in which, I got a full-time job. Sometimes I work 40, 50 hours a week. Sometimes, I have to work weekends, and I'll work 2 weeks straight without a day off,
Sure.
And there's times when I get off work, it's like, you know what I don't want to do? I'm an editor by trade. I don't want to edit when I get home.
I don't want to do work at work. Exactly. I don't want to do work at home. Yeah, I get that.
I enjoy it, but, and there's times in which there's times I would go 6 months without even working on this movie. There's sometimes I probably went a year. I don't know. I feel like there are times in which I just was so busy and was so burnt out, I wouldn't work on it for certain. Then I would get like, a boost of inspiration or something, or my wife would push me and be like, hey, feel free to work on that. You got to get it done. You got to get it done. And, feels like over the last 3 years is probably when I worked the most on it to get it done. And,
yeah. No, it was cool, and I think it was kind of fun how it was what's the word, premiered, you
Yeah.
know, in kind of a live setting. I know I realize it pales in comparison to what the original plan was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Because
that
if you would have the vibe that, man, just that like 3 weeks prior to it, man, the vibe in the whole LS camp was so glowing. It's like I remember going over to Lance's mom, Bruce's mom's house where they were practicing for the show, and I was giving the guys I put the documentary on thumb drives because they haven't seen it yet, and I gave it to them, and it was just everyone was in such a good mood, and Jason was a part of it, and everyone was just, it was so awesome. It was going to be so awesome, and then to have that COVID thing shut it down was hard, and that's why me and Bruce decided to do the stream, because we really wanted people to see it because so many people are asking about it. It was just like, let's just do a stream. And I think the way we did the stream, I think the way you did the Q&A, I think the way everyone was a part of it, I feel like it was the next best thing we could have done besides having them play a set right after the movie. But
totally agree. I think that number one, it was cool because I got to be a part of it this time around.
Right.
Although I did have tickets to that show, so I would have been bothering you guys in one way or another, during that time. But yeah, it was. I remember being all stoked to go. I had time off work and everything, and just watching the entire music industry systematically fall apart in a matter of 2 to 3 days. Well, it's so funny. We were interviewing for my other podcast, Brutally Speaking. My co-host, most of his interviews he did in person. He was up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so he would go to his local venue and just interview bands, as they came through. And it's so funny. They're talking. He's in the middle of a conversation with the guy, and the guy's like, yeah, so a couple of dates, it looks like, they might end up getting canceled, but I think the rest of the tour is cool. And then the guy, as he's doing the interview, keeps getting notifications on his phone over and over. Oh, okay, the next one's canceled. This one's canceled. This one's canceled. And by the end of the interview, he's like, well, I guess we're going home. That was.
And that premiere that we were going to do that with the show, I mean, we got canceled literally 2 weeks before it was to happen. And that, oh my God, getting that call just,
yeah.
I mean, I was like telling the guy, I was like, because, it was just a complete shutdown across the state. And I was telling the guy, yeah, but it's just in 2 weeks. Can't we just, can't you just stay open for 2 more weeks until, he's like, no, we got to do it. And I was like, dang.
Yeah.
And stupid me, I was like, well, we'll just reschedule it for like the next month, not knowing that it was going to be a whole entire year and everything's still going to be shut down. But
yeah, and it's still like that in certain parts of the country. It's like, it's crazy. But no, I think it was really cool how it ended up getting presented, and I think it was a really good way to interact with the fan base in a way that
more people got to see it too, because I think over 500. I think it was like 541 tickets were sold.
Yeah,
to the stream, and I think the theater we were going to do the movie and premiere only held, I think, 250. So we I think more people got to see it this way, which was great. So.
But, speaking on that, and I'm not going to get into this too much because I don't know about you, but I personally am tired of answering this question. And that is just everybody keeps being like DVD, Blu-ray. And I'm going to just take my best stab at it. All I ever tell anybody is, I don't think they're planning on doing that right now. Is it just a licensing thing, really?
The licensing thing, yeah, because, I know nothing about it. I know nothing about licensing.
Sure, yeah.
To me, I'm putting that in Bruce's court.
Sure.
As far as and Bruce talked to me about different ways of releasing it. I think that Bruce doesn't really want to release it as a DVD or a Blu-ray, only because he only feels like, only so many people are going to buy it, and the cost would not outweigh the whatever the benefit of it. He was suggesting more of a pay-per-view or a digital download is what we are trying to go towards, so, but again, it's a slow process getting all that, and I feel like I'm guilty of not doing that years ago and getting that ball rolling. But in doing this movie, I was more focused on getting the movie finished versus all the little sub things. Because if I had all these little sub things going on where I had to worry about hearing back from this guy,
you'd never gotten it done. Yeah,
I never would have gotten it done because my mind works. I have a one track mind where it's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on this. Anything that comes in from the side just throws me for a loop, and I just don't, it just,
yeah,
I'll procrastinate. So,
no, I feel you. I feel you on that. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of it. Is that I think that there's a possibility that there could be a more permanent release sometime, but yeah, as it goes right now,
right, and I feel bad about it because but we're trying. It's not like we're just saying, oh, that's it. You're never going to see it again. And, it's just, we are trying to put it, I mean, if there is there's really not a plan, but we're taking steps to get to that point. But as soon as I hear, or as soon as Bruce finds out something, if we get closer, I'll tell everyone, that yes, this is what our goal for, by this date, this is going to happen, and again, we might release a DVD or a Blu-ray. I don't know. We talk back and forth, and 1 minute this sounds good, the next minute it doesn't. But then this person hears, man, I keep, like Arthur's saying, I keep hearing all these people wanting this and that and DVDs. I think we should do a DVD. And then, yeah, it's cool. It's just,
I've been there before though. They're not going to do, they don't do like for mass manufactured products like that. They don't like, they're like, okay, how many do you want? Do you want 1,000 or you want 10,000?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, well, we were thinking like 2,000. Oh, okay. So we'll put you down for 10,000.
Right.
It's like, I remember that it was like that when I was trying to get CDs. This is years ago now. I think CDs can be made very cheaply now, but but years ago it was the same thing. They're like, yeah, it's a quantity of either 100 or 5,000.
Right.
And I remember being like, our band's not going to sell 5,000 CDs. You know what I mean? Like that, not some local band out of St. Louis, Doesn't matter how good we are.
I think Bruce was just saying, like, Bruce doesn't think that we would sell more than 500 DVDs. That kind of meant, it's like, I don't know,
Yeah. No, that's cool. And I think, that makes me happy knowing that over 500 people got to watch it.
Yeah.
Me
too. Because Bruce has said his goal was, he said, man, I hope at least my goal was 500 people, and at the end of the day, it was I think it was like 541 or 561. It was something like that. So I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we got a full house on the Q&A afterwards. So, I mean, it was, I think all of it went off really, really well. It was one of the most fun weekends I've had in a long time, where my wife, it was funny during the day. My wife's like, I was actually home. My wife was at a convention the entire day. And so while all of this was going on, while we're doing the test call or whatever, I was at home with 4 kids. So what I did is, so when Bruce was like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this test call at 11 o'clock, in the morning, I was like, oh, that's cool. So like, I just went upstairs and I put a movie on, in the living room. So they're all sitting. So I kind of come down here, and they were actually really, really good for, for a good majority of it. So
there you go.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was equally stressful. It's one of those things. It's the most fun I've had it's one of the most fun nights I've had ever.
Right.
But it's something I'm super glad is over.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I know what you're saying.
So, but very cool. David, thank you so much, man, for taking the time out tonight. This was a lot of fun, and I hope that the people that were watching it, or will hear it, later on, I hope a lot of questions got kind of answered. I know there was a lot of questions flying in the Q&A. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read every single one of them, right. Just because there were so many people there, and the chat room was going so fast, and it was one of those things where I was like, man, it sucks that not everybody gets to have that time with the band, but I think we only had like 90 minutes or something, to get it all in. So I hope everybody that participated in that enjoyed it. But this is kind of like a extended edition of that, I think.
All right. If anyone ever has any questions either, I mean, I run the 30 Years Sacrifice Facebook page. I mean, anyone wants to jot a message or ask me a question. Every once in a while I get people asking questions, but that's, I have no problem answering anyone's questions on that page. So Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, we we will do our little outro thing here, which is basically just me just saying that if you like this podcast and this conversation, I do interviews like this every single week. I do them live on my YouTube channel at Discuss Metal Dan, and I also stream video games on nights where I don't have anything else to do. So if you guys want to chat or hang out, make sure to check out our podcast, or my podcast, Discography Discussion, or Brutally Speaking. There'll be links for those in the comments below, or in the, what do I always say, show notes, but I'm not doing a podcast. I'm new to YouTube, guys. So,
like and subscribe.
Yeah, smash that subscribe button. Ring the little bell, notification bell, all that good stuff. But yeah, David, thank you so much, man. This was a lot of fun, and I have a feeling we'll probably end up doing something like this again soon because there's so much more we could talk about. So
definitely, I'll try to come up with some more clips for you to roll.
There you go. World exclusives. Yeah,
appreciate it.
This has been the Discuss Metal podcast with filmmaker David Lipke, hosted by Dan Terry, presented by discussmetal.com.